The day my father asked if I could help out with the mortgage, I was standing in a laundromat, holding a plastic bag of off-brand detergent I'd bought with quarters. He said they were struggling, said Alex had enough on his plate focusing on his future, said I'd always been the strong one. I stared at the phone, then at the receipt crumpled in my hand, and realized he meant it, me, the same daughter he charged rent at 16, while my brother got free rides and steak dinners. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just laughed and hung up. Before this story starts, do me a favor, like the video and subscribe, because stories like this only survive when people choose to listen, and this one begins with a single sentence that changed everything. I was 16 when my dad handed me a manila envelope across the kitchen table, still stained with spaghetti sauce from the night before, and said, "You can start helping out now, you're not a kid anymore." My brother, Alex, was upstairs gaming with his door closed, blasting the usual Warzone screams through his speakers. I held the envelope, unsure if it was a joke, but his face didn't shift. Inside, there was a rent breakdown, $400 a month, due on the 1st, $75 extra if I missed it. "You've got a job, right?" he added, sipping his gas station coffee. I'd just gotten hired at Mary's Diner, bussing tables after school, walking home in the dark with my hoodie pulled tight and one earbud in so I could hear footsteps behind me. My paycheck was maybe $180 a week before taxes, and I thought that meant I could finally buy decent shoes, maybe a second pair of jeans that weren't thrifted. But he stood there waiting for me to nod, and I did, even though my stomach dropped. "Okay," I said, voice small, and Mom gave me that tired half-smile like it was some rite of passage. That first month, I sold my AirPods to make rent. By the second, I stopped eating lunch to save. There was this one night I came home soaked, rain in my socks, my tip money still folded in my back pocket, and Alex was at the table eating DoorDash sushi, laughing with Dad over real estate TikToks. "We're thinking of getting him into wholesaling," Dad said, clapping him on the back. "He's got a brain for deals." I stood there holding a plastic bag of expired bread I'd bought for $1.29, and nobody looked up. That was my dinner. At school, I kept my head down. I couldn't join clubs, couldn't stay late for help, always had to clock in or be home by curfew. When I tried to vent to my counselor, she asked if I'd thought about trade school, said college might be unrealistic if I had financial responsibilities. I wanted to scream. Alex was applying to NYU and skipping school, to tour campuses. His gas was covered, his lunch money came in crisp bills, and once, I overheard Mom whispering to someone that he needed to focus on his future, like I didn't have one. "Why does he get a free ride?" I asked once, right after rent was due and my card got declined at CVS buying tampons. Mom just looked at me like I was asking the wrong question. "He's different," she said, folding towels that weren't mine. "He has a shot, and you are strong. You'll be okay." That was the end of the conversation. I nodded, walked back to my room, and sat on the floor, knees pressed to my chest, wondering how being strong meant going without and how being okay felt so much like being used. By 17, I was behind on schoolwork and barely sleeping. I missed prom, didn't bother with yearbook photos, and stopped inviting friends over because I couldn't explain why I had to Venmo my mom for frozen pizza. My only real conversations were with customers, Mr. Allen who tipped in change and always asked if I was getting enough rest, and Chloe from the boutique next door, who once slipped me a $20 just because. I told her I'd pay her back. She said, "Don't be stupid. That's for you. You deserve it." I almost cried right there in my apron. There were these small humiliations that stacked like bricks. Being late with rent and having Dad tell me he was disappointed in my work ethic, finding out Alex had crashed the Civic and they just bought him a used BMW the next week. Mom left a note on my pillow once that said, "Remember to smile. You're so beautiful when you smile," like maybe that would fix the exhaustion in my face. At dinner, they talked about colleges and internships and how Alex might need a place in the city. I just passed the potatoes and chewed quietly. One night, I came home after a double shift, feet blistered, hands raw, and found a notice on the fridge in my dad's handwriting. "Rent will increase to $450 starting next month due to rising costs." No conversation, no warning, just a number. I stood in the dark kitchen, fridge humming behind me, and stared at it like maybe it would blink away. Then I turned, walked past the closed doors, and into my room, where the heater never worked and the window still had a draft. I lay down fully clothed, shoes still on, and didn't move for hours. I moved out 4 days after graduation, a grocery bag stuffed with underwear, a trash bag holding my uniforms, and a shoebox of tips I'd saved to put down a deposit on a room above a print shop. The landlord didn't ask questions, just counted cash and handed me the key. The window stuck and the floor creaked every time I turned over in bed, but it was quiet, and I could sit on the floor without hearing someone ask why I was home already, why I wasn't doing more, what I thought I was entitled to. This time, Alex came by once, just to see the place, stood in the doorway with his sunglasses on, said it smelled like dust and printer ink, then laughed, said, "You're really doing this, huh?" I didn't know what to say, because doing this wasn't some brave move, it was just survival. It was getting out before I collapsed under all that fake fairness they kept feeding me like vitamins. I told him I was working doubles now, saving for community college. He shrugged, said, "That's solid, I guess," then walked off before I could ask how New York applications were going. Mom called the next night, asked if I'd remembered to pay Dad for July, said they were short since the water bill went up. I reminded her gently that I didn't live there anymore. There was a pause. Then she said, "Right, of course. I just thought you might still want to contribute. It's only fair." I bit the inside of my cheek and said I'd think about it, hung up and stared at the ceiling while the printer downstairs buzzed like a wasp. I hadn't even been gone a week, and already they were asking me to come back as cash. They posted Alex's acceptance letter on Facebook, all caps, big smile, champagne bottle emoji. His room had fairy lights strung across the wall and balloons from Party City. I stared at the photos during my 10-minute break outside the diner. Grease clinging to my skin, smoke blowing from someone's cigarette beside me. I didn't react, just turned off my phone and went back in. The bus tub was waiting, heavy with plates smeared in half-eaten cheese and meat grease. I scrubbed with my back, aching, wondering what kind of cake they'd bought him, if they let him eat first this time. Aunt Carla sent him a MacBook and $200 in cash. She'd always favored him, said he was charming like your grandfather, and I was just like your mom, always tired. I used to take that personally. Now I just saw it for what it was. A kind of blindness, the way people see potential only in people who fit the mold, not the ones who keep the lights on or pick up the slack. She didn't know I hadn't owned a laptop since middle school, that I typed essays at the library, that I kept coins for bus fare in my bra. I passed him on the sidewalk one evening, a girl on his arm, long blonde hair and expensive boots. She was laughing and tossing her head like she was on camera. I don't think he saw me, or maybe he did and chose not to say anything. I stood still for a moment, then kept walking, hands in my hoodie, stomach aching with that old burn I'd never named. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't even sadness. It was more like knowing I'd been cut out of the story while it was still being written, like the narrator had skipped my chapter. That week, I got an email from school, said my financial aid wasn't enough to cover even part-time classes, that I'd need a cosigner or a larger deposit. I texted Mom, just a simple ask, didn't even say why, just could you? And she replied, "Ask your father," he sent back. "Can't afford to put money where it won't show returns. Try working full-time another year." I stared at the message while mopping the diner floor, wet socks inside my sneakers, the manager yelling from the kitchen. And something settled in my chest that I couldn't name, something hard and final. A week later, they mailed me a birthday card, pastel colors, and some cheap glitter sticker that had already started to peel. Inside was a $10 bill and a note in Mom's handwriting that said, "Proud of you. Stay strong." I held it in my lap for a long time, then used the money for groceries, canned soup, and generic cereal. I kept the card pinned to the wall for a month before it fell, the tape giving up like everything else, and I didn't bother to hang it back up, just swept it into the trash with the crumbs. I was 22 when the envelope came, soft pink, thick paper, my name in cursive like we'd spoken recently, like we were still that kind of family. I opened it with my key while balancing a takeout container on my hip. Inside was a wedding invitation with gold-foiled edges and a save-the-date magnet. Alex and Layla, June 24th, RSVP by May. I stared at the smiling photo they'd used, his hand on her waist like he owned something. The background blurred out so you couldn't tell it was taken in. The backyard I used to rake leaves in every fall. It wasn't the invitation that caught me off guard, it was the handwritten note tucked behind it. Hope you can come. We'd love to see you. Bring someone if you're dating. Like I wasn't still working 6 days a week and living above a dry cleaner. Like I hadn't missed 4 birthdays and a funeral because I couldn't afford the gas. I left it on the counter and heated up my noodles, the sauce bubbling loud enough to drown out my thoughts. I didn't touch the envelope again for days, just stepped around it like a crack in the floor. 2 weeks later, Mom called and asked if I'd RSVP'd, said Layla's family needed a head count for the catering, said they were doing a champagne brunch instead of a traditional reception because her people don't really do buffets. I told her I wasn't sure I could take time off. She sighed hard into the phone and said, "It's your brother's wedding, don't make this about you." And I wanted to ask when anything had last been about me, but I didn't. I just said I'd try, even though I'd already done the math in my head and knew the answer. The second call came from Alex, rare for him, almost apologetic, said they were short on cash and asked if I could help cover the photographer, just a few hundred. I could pay in parts if I needed to. It'd mean a lot to Mom, he said. I asked why they needed help if both families were pitching in. He hesitated, said something about budgeting mistakes, about Layla's mom wanting custom linens and the deposit for the venue going up last minute. I said I'd think about it, even though my rent was late and my car had started clicking on left turns. I didn't say anything at first, just carried the ask around like a stone in my pocket, but when I finally told Jo, my coworker at the diner, she blinked slow and said, "Wait, your family's charging you to attend a wedding you barely got invited to?" And I laughed for the first time in days, not because it was funny, but because I needed to exhale. She shook her head, said, "Girl, they trained you to think you owe them for breathing," and something about the way she said it made my throat tighten. Like I'd been caught in the act of disappearing. I checked their wedding website one night, half curious, half morbid. The registry was long. Espresso machines, monogrammed towels, a $300 cutting board, even a honeymoon fund listed by tier. You could sponsor their first massage or a sunset cruise in Maui. I stared at the page until my screen dimmed, then shut the laptop and sat in the dark, arms folded, the hum of the fridge the only sound. I thought about the 4th job I'd quit after being shorted on hours, about the dental bill I still hadn't paid, about how many times I'd been told he deserved more. May came fast, the deadline circled on the magnet I hadn't thrown out yet, stuck on the side of the microwave like it belonged there. I wrote, "Declines with regret," in small letters and mailed it with exact postage. Didn't include a gift, didn't send a card. Just sealed the envelope and dropped it in the blue box outside the 7-Eleven where I bought my cereal. Didn't think about how it would land, just knew I wouldn't be there to watch him smile for photos while people toasted to the future they'd always carved out for him and never offered me. A week later, Mom left a voicemail, said she was disappointed, said you only get one brother, and I listened while folding towels that weren't mine in the laundromat, the machine spinning too loud for anyone to hear how quiet I'd gone. She said family meant showing up even when things weren't perfect, said it was hard for Alex, you not being there, and I wanted to ask if he remembered the year I missed prom, if he remembered the envelope that wasn't pink, the one I paid in cash every month, while he was still learning to drive. The week after the wedding, I found an old receipt stuck inside a paperback I hadn't touched in years. Ink faded but clear enough. June 1st, 2018, $400 cash. Memo line said rent, June. And just like that, something clicked. I started digging through the drawer where I kept old pay stubs and grocery lists. Found another receipt, then another, some handwritten, some printed, all marked with months, names, amounts, like breadcrumbs I'd never meant to leave. I spread them across the floor that night, knees aching, one finger on each corner like they'd fly away if I looked too close. By morning, I had 42 months accounted for, each one a payment made directly to them, cash or transfer, sometimes both, sometimes rounded up, especially near holidays when Dad said heating costs were just brutal this year. I never questioned it. Just handed over whatever I had, because he always said, it's what grown-ups do, and I wanted so badly to be treated like one, I added it twice just to be sure. $18,870, not counting groceries, utilities, or the $600 I paid when the water heater broke and he said the landlord wouldn't cover it, even though they own the house. I wasn't angry. That wasn't the shape of it. It was more like clarity, like someone had wiped a fogged mirror and my own face was staring back, tired and sharp. I took photos of the receipts, saved them to a folder, labeled each transfer. It wasn't about collecting evidence, not exactly. It was more like stitching together a version of the past that didn't keep rewriting itself. I stopped at one note written in blue ink. Thanks for pitching in. We'll pay you back when things level out, signed. With Mom's initials, that one I read 3 times. Later that week, I saw Alex at the grocery store. First time since the wedding. He was holding a wire basket with 2 steaks and a bottle of wine. Layla beside him in some beige set that probably cost more than my rent. He looked surprised to see me. Like I was somewhere I didn't belong. Did you get the wedding photos? He asked, like nothing had happened. I said I hadn't checked. He nodded, then added, you know, it really hurt Mom when you didn't show. And I almost laughed, said, yeah, well, missing things seems to run in the family. He started to say something else, but Layla tugged his sleeve, said they had a dinner to get to, and I just nodded, let him walk away with the steaks swinging in the basket like something earned, not handed. I bought eggs and frozen vegetables, paid in cash. Walked home with my headphones in but no music playing, just the hum of cars and the sound of his voice still caught in my ears, like he really believed we'd grown up in the same house, like he couldn't see the cost of every inch he'd climbed. That night, I printed everything. Every receipt, every screenshot, every note I'd saved in old apps, stacked them in order, sealed them in a folder, and placed it in the drawer under my socks, not because I had a plan, but because I wanted it somewhere solid. Somewhere that didn't disappear when someone said it didn't happen. I stared at the folder for a while, then closed the drawer, turned off the light, sat in the dark kitchen and ate dry cereal from the box, letting the crumbs fall where they wanted, too tired to reach for a spoon. A few days later, I got a call from Dad, first in months, his voice scratchy like he'd just woken up, said they were behind on something, didn't say what, just asked if I could help out, said, just until we get our footing. I said I'd have to check. Didn't give him a number, just asked what happened to the money from the wedding, from the family gifts, from the savings he once said he was building. There was silence. Then he said, things shift fast these days, and I let that sit there until it didn't sound like anything at all. He called again 2 days later, this time more direct, said he'd heard I was doing well, that I should remember who kept me afloat back when I needed help, and I didn't interrupt. Just waited for the silence that always came when people expected you to feel guilty on command. When he finally stopped talking, I said, you didn't keep me afloat. You charged me rent to drown, and hung up before he could reply. Sat at my desk after and wrote down the date, circled it in red, not for revenge, not for memory, just because it was the first time I said it aloud. The next time Mom called, she didn't ask about money. She asked if I'd come to Sunday dinner, said it had been too long, said it's time to move past all that. I didn't answer right away, just looked at the dishes in my sink, the ones I'd bought on clearance last year. Chipped but mine. I told her I'd think about it. She said she'd make her sweet potato casserole. Said Alex and Layla would be there. Said it's just a meal, and I could hear the hope folded in her voice like she wanted to believe it was true. Sunday came, and I stood outside the house for 3 full minutes before knocking, porch still creaky in the same spot, fake flowers in the wreath, the smell of something sweet drifting through the screen door. She opened it smiling, arms open wide like nothing had ever happened. Said I looked tired but pretty. Said the kitchen was hot from baking. Said Alex was on his way. I followed her in, careful not to let my bag touch the walls. Everything was familiar, but smaller somehow, the hallway. Paint still peeling in the corners, same fridge magnets, same silence behind things. Dinner was already on the table, roast chicken, green beans, some store-bought rolls they'd fluffed in the microwave. Mom gestured for me to sit, said, "Your spot's still yours," and I almost didn't, but I did. Alex arrived 5 minutes later, loud and smiling. Slapped my shoulder like we'd been in touch, said he'd heard I was working downtown now. I nodded, said the commute was fine. Layla smiled with her lips, but not her eyes. Asked how the apartment was, said something about loving gritty charm. I just sipped my water, waited for whatever it was they hadn't said yet. It came halfway through dessert, quiet at first, Dad clearing his throat, then saying they were looking into refinancing the house, said the market was tricky and banks were slow, said they just needed a little liquidity to start the process. Alex chimed in, said, "It's short term," said I could take equity when things balance. Mom didn't say anything, just refilled my coffee cup and looked at the pie like it would answer for her. I didn't touch the fork, just leaned back and asked who was on the loan paperwork, and silence followed, just a beat too long to be nothing. Dad looked down, said they'd used my name back when I lived there, said it was just for credit score purposes, that I didn't need to worry, it wasn't affecting me. I asked if I was listed on the current mortgage or just the old agreement, and again, silence. This time sharper, Alex said. "It's not like that, it was just easier that way. You had good credit, remember?" And I nodded slowly, said I remembered everything, especially the part where I paid rent on a house I apparently helped secure. The pie sat untouched, crust cracking open like it knew something too. I didn't yell, didn't ask for explanations, just pushed my chair back, stood slowly, said I hoped they figured it out, said I had work in the morning. Layla looked down at her lap. Alex started to protest. Dad said my name like it was supposed to mean something heavier. I walked to the door and pulled it open, cool air hitting my skin like a reset. Mom followed, said, "Don't leave like this," and I turned, said, "I didn't ask to be written into your debts." Then walked down the steps, each one quieter than the last, shoes scraping softly. That night, I pulled my credit report, printed it out, circled everything in my name, made 3 calls the next morning, one to a financial advisor, one to a credit officer, one to a friend who worked in property law, explained the situation plainly. Left out the guilt, kept only the facts, filed what needed filing, signed what needed signing, mailed what needed to be mailed, not out of anger, just out of a need to know that my name meant something to me again, something clean, something I could stand on without someone else dragging it behind their plans. 2 weeks later, I got a text from Mom that just said, "We got the letter," and I didn't reply. I turned off my phone, poured cereal into a chipped blue bowl, sat on the edge of my bed with the window cracked open, birds loud outside, laundry tumbling in the hall machine, a neighbor's kid singing something off-key, and for the first time in years, I felt the shape of my life without anyone else's hand in it, just mine, just me, just quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't wait for the next ask. The kind that means I'm home. If they made you feel like survival was a debt you owed them, who would you be if you stopped paying? Like the video and subscribe if you believe some stories deserve to be told all the way through, because what happens next is always why it matters.